Hey guys, another Chapter 5, Section 6 video here for you. Essential question today is how can I write an equation for a pattern? So we are really working hard on looking at patterns and making tables and drawing graphs. And we are going to continue that work today, but let's kind of get into a couple things. All of our focus has been on what we call linear graphs. So there's an important word to write down, linear. And linear is just kind of a way of saying it's going in a straight line. If you haven't caught on yet, every graph we've done in the last few videos and in class has been in the form of a straight line. And what you need to know about that is that's a pattern that has a constant growth. All of our growth values have been things like +3, +3, +3. That's very constant. Or -5, -5, -5. If you look at the table, whatever the growth number is, it's been the same every time. Constant growth. And one of the equations that we can use for this is y equals mx plus b. This is kind of our shortcut to writing an equation, writing a rule for the pattern. Now the m and the b are actually numbers, they're not actually variables. The b and the m are actually the growth number and the figure 0. So whatever the pattern's growing by, that's your m, and whatever the number of tiles in figure 0 is, that's your b. We could also call that growth number the slope number also. So we're going to try a problem, and we're going to practice this skill a little bit. Here's our example. We're going to take y equals -2x plus 4, and we're going to analyze it a little bit. We're going to turn it into a table and a graph. So right away when I look at this, a table sounds like something I can easily get going on. So I'm going to set up an XY table, and somewhere in the middle of my table I'm going to put 0. That means I'm going to, on the left, have a couple negative numbers, and on the right have a couple positive numbers. So I'm going to do this. I'm going to do -2 and -1, and then 0, and then 1 and 2. And this is usually what I call my go-to for graphing. I like a couple negative numbers and a couple positive numbers, and I like to have 0 most of the time. Now here's what we know from the rule. -2x plus 4 has a b value of b equals 4. That's our figure 0, so that's going to go right there where the 0 is. The other thing we know is that the -2 is the growth number. That means we have a pattern going down 2. So we are going to take 2 away. 4 take away 2 is 2. And then we're going to take another 2 away, and that's going to make 0. Now think backwards here a moment. If you had to add the 2 backwards, you'd get 6, and then you'd have 8. And there's our pattern. And we're going to take this pattern now, and we're going to place it on a graph. So grab a ruler and set up your x and y axis and make it nice and neat on your graph paper. We need to label our scale numbers. I went all the way to 10 basically. So I went all the way up to 10 and all the way down to -10. And same thing going left and right. I gave myself a lot of space. So if you need to pause the video to set your graph up, go for it. I'm going to plot my points. The first point in the table is at -2 and 8. So we'll put that on the graph. The second point in the table is at -1 and 6. And then we have that 0, 4. And then we have that 1, 2, and the last one's at 2, 0, which would be right there. And sure enough, there's our straight line. We're going to grab our ruler and connect our points. We got a very nice looking line here. But what else could we do besides make the line? We can do more than that now. We could label it. We've got a rule, y equals -2x plus 4. I'm going to put that label on the graph. We could zoom in really close and we could make a growth triangle. Pick 2 points and make your rise and run triangle. Looks like the rise is going down and the run is going over. It looks like it's going down 2, so -2 and over 1. So we get a nice rise and run of -2 over 1. And what that means is our slope is equal to that rise over run fraction, which is -2 over 1, which is just -2 divided by 1 is -2. And that makes a lot of sense because look at this. We got -2 everywhere here. We got it in the rule, we got it in the table, and we got it on the graph as a slope triangle. There's a huge connection there between that growth number. Okay, so now let's take it into more of a real life situation here. So, do you know where this city is? I hope you do. I hope you know that's New York City. I don't know if you've ever been before, but I've only been in the summer, and I can tell you my story about that later in class. You'll have to ask me about it. But here's our story. If you've ever been to New York, one of the common ways of getting around is the taxi cab. And in New York, a cab company will charge you $2 per cab ride plus an additional $3 per mile driven. So what does that mean? That means to get into the cab, like if you hail a taxi, you wave your hand in the air and the taxi pulls over and you get in the back seat, they charge you $2 for getting in, and then they start driving, and every mile that they drive, they charge you $3 more. And so they add up that cost, and when they drop you off at your location, you pay the taxi cab driver. So if that's our story, here's what we're going to do in our notebook. We're going to write down what's important, the story facts. So the story facts are, it's $2 per cab ride and $3 per mile. Those are the important numbers from our story. Those are all we need to set up a table. Now, when I go to set up my table, since I have a real life story here, I'm not going to just say X and Y. I'm going to say miles and cost in dollars. Those are the two things we're going to measure, miles and costs. And I know in the last problem, I told you I like to put 0 in the middle and do a couple negatives and a couple positives. That's not going to work in this story. How are you going to have negative miles? Is the taxi cab driving in reverse? That just sounds like a bad idea, doesn't it? So we're going to start with just 0. We're going to go 0, 1, 2, 3. So let's think about this. If you drive 0 miles, how much do you pay the taxi cab driver? If you go 0 miles, all you've done is gotten into the cab. Doesn't that cost you $2 to get into the cab? But if you drive 1 mile, then you have to pay an extra $3. So 3 plus 2 is 5. If you drive 2 miles, you have to pay $3 more. And if you drive 3 miles, you got to pay $3 more. So we've got a pattern going on here. And I could make this table bigger. I could keep going to 4 miles, 5 miles, 6 miles. I mean, you could go on a really big taxi ride, but I'm going to stop there. I'm going to label that growth because I see that it's adding 3 each time, plus 3 plus 3. That seems important to label. And I'm going to label it this way too. I'm going to say the growth is m equals 3, because remember, y equals mx plus b. M is your growth number. M is 3. So we can write an equation here because we've got the 0. We've got the figure 0 that we just circled, which I'm going to label figure 0. B equals 2. Figure 0 is $2. So we can write that equation, that y equals mx plus b. It's going to be y equals 3x plus 2. 3 is the growth and 2 is the figure 0. Those are the numbers that we need from the table. Now we're getting really close to having all 4 representations. We got the story, we got the table, we got the equation. There's only one thing missing, and what is it? Yeah, we're missing the graph. So we got to decide which type of graph we want to do. Do we want to do all 4 quadrants or just a first quadrant? Well, there's no negative numbers, is there? So let's go first quadrant on this one. I'm going to leave the table up in the corner so we can see it. Grab your ruler, make it neat and nice. I'm going to label my x-axis as the miles and my y-axis as the costs in dollars. And then I'm going to put on some scale numbers, 1 to 10, and I decided I needed bigger numbers, so I went by 2s on the y-axis, and I went 2 to 20. 2, 4, 6, 8, because I knew I was going to have to get up to at least $11, so I went by 2s. You could go by 1s if you want, but you have to make a bigger graph. Then we're going to plot our points. So the first thing is if you drive 0 miles, you still pay $2. If you drive 1 mile, you pay $5. If you drive 2 miles, $8, and 3 miles, $11. We're going to take those numbers from the table. And sure enough, we got our straight line here. Let's connect it. There it is. Okay, well, what else could we do with this graph? Is there anything else we could add? Oh, totally. We could label the rule, y equals 3x plus 2. 3 is the growth and 2 is the figure 0. We could do the growth triangle, the rise and the run, which it looks like, now this one's tricky because I counted by 2s on the y-axis, but the rise is up 3 over 1. That gives us a slope with rise over run, a slope equal to 3 over 1. What's 3 divided by 1? 3. Perfect. We want that connection because look, we're going to circle. Look at the relationship here. 3 is the growth in the table. 3 is the y equals 3x in the mx plus b. And 3 is the slope from the growth triangle. Everything connects really well there. Okay, so we're going to wrap up this video now by stepping back here and taking a look at our work here. So this is kind of all the different pieces that we have. We started with the story. We built the table. We found the equation y equals mx plus b, and then we made the graph. all four representations, and that's what we want to be able to do. Represent any kind of situation 4 different ways. So kind of to finalize this video, I really hope your takeaway today is that you're starting to feel comfortable with that y equals mx plus b. M is the growth, b is the figure 0. You want to get that kind of stuck in your head for algebra next year when you get into your algebra classes. So thanks for watching, guys. See you next time.